This is a supercut of answers from 7 different advisor interviews. These advisors are for the New Rules for Work Creativity Symposium. And so at the end of each interview, I asked the advisor what they thought the most important job skill for the next 5 years was. And so I've strung together their answers just to that question in these 12 or 13 minutes here. So we're going to start with Keith McCandless. Keith McCandless is the co-creator of Liberating Structures and the co-author of the book, The Power of Liberating Structures. Keith, I have two more questions.
Yeah.
One, what's the most important job skill for the next 5 years?
Okay, I'll give you 2 answers. One is face up to your despair. Can you work with despair? Can you work with what's been lost? Can you grieve what you've lost? It's sort of like a trizz for yourself. Can you let go of? It's not really like a trizz because you actually have to do some work, but can you grieve a little bit? And it might help you do some things. So after that, the next 5 years would be, well, I've been doing a lot with critical uncertainty. So what futures are plausible? And then what are the range of responses that would prepare us for surprise? Given that we don't know what the future is, what are the range of, so imaginative thinking and disciplined thinking about a range of responses given that the future will surprise us. So that's a skill. That's a big one.
Next, we talk to Dr. Joseph Allen, who is a professor of industrial and organizational psychology at the University of Utah, where he directs the Center for Meeting Effectiveness, housed in the Rocky Mountain Center for Occupational and Environmental Health. Joe, what's the most important job skill over the next 5 years?
Most important job skill? Communication flexibility.
Does that have some kind of implication of tech as well? I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
It must, right?
Yeah. So what I believe, and again, I told you not to ask me to predict the future because I'm terrible at it. I said that earlier. You better make sure that makes the cut because tarot cards are not my friend. Point being, communication flexibility is really about can the person communicate in all the different methodologies and modalities in an effective manner. So this is asynchronous communication, this is synchronous communication, and it's all the different technologies, right? Those who can be effective in face-to-face, virtual, and hybrid meetings, who can be effective in email, text, audio, and video communication, strategies. Those who can do those things well, no matter what industry they're in, they will rise within their organizations quite dramatically and quite quickly because they'll be able to present well, they'll be able to communicate well, and whatever ideas they have, assuming they have any good ideas, will be seen and heard in a more effective and comprehensive manner. And so the people that communicate well in this very varied communication environment are going to be more effective. And those who aren't able to do that won't be as visible and may teeter on the area of invisibility within their own organization.
Up next, we have Dr. Nale Lehmann-Willenbrock. She's the chair of industrial and organizational psychology at the University of Hamburg, Germany, where she also leads the Center for Better Work, where they bring insights from research into the organizational practice. That's amazing. So it's a great segue into really our last question, which is what is the most important job skill for the next 5 years?
I want to say maintaining your status as a social human being despite everything. And that sounds really vague, but what I mean by that is a lot of the changes in work, whether we call this new work or something else, but a lot of the changes have changed or affected our interaction paradigms at work, whether we're in a leader position or a regular team member. And it's been difficult and it's put a strain on our social relationships at work. And it's been a draining experience for many and it's affected people's well-being. And so I think being able to manage that and being able to use technology for the best purpose there is, namely to your relationships and make them better and maybe even improve collaboration beyond what we're able to do in face-to-face settings. I think that's going to be the crucial skill. So feeling like a social being, even though we're just in front of the screen for a lot of the time.
Next, we have Dr. Myriam Hadnes, who is a behavioral economist by training. She's the host of the Workshops Work podcast, and she's a devoted facilitator. Motivated by her vision that we can change the world one workshop at a time, she curates the global Never Done Before community that explores the edges of the art and craft of facilitation.
To me, facilitation is the ability to leverage the power of groups. So if you're a good facilitator, it means that you're a good listener, you're asking the right questions, you're able to synthesize, you're able to empower and encourage the group to go larger than their parts. You are a good delegator. You're not a micromanager by definition if you're a facilitator, because you're making the work for others easier. And I think if our leaders, our managers were better facilitators, we would have less meetings, we would have better meetings, be more creative, we would be able to bridge the silos, would be able to actually do the work after the meeting and after the workshop, and not use workshops and meetings as excuse for not doing the work. So yeah, facilitation is the 21st century skill.
And would you talk just quickly, because you mentioned in there leadership? I think I'm hearing more and more about facilitation as a leadership skill, where before facilitation was relegated to the person that you hired outside the company that came in and did a team building activity. Why or where is facilitation landing up on this leadership landscapes?
A leader is a leader because they are followers. So a leader is a leader because they are teams and they have to do the work the leader has, usually carries the responsibility, maybe has the vision, in order to make sure that this team is collaborating and lifting this vision, bringing this vision to life. They need certain skills to bring the team together, to make sure that everyone in the team is really using their talents in the best way. And for me, if a leader is a good facilitator, then all these meetings, all these one-on-ones, all these all hands will be more effective. And they will appreciate good facilitation, then they will, that's what I see, hire external facilitators for the more important workshops, because they recognize how important it is to have someone objective coming in from the outside and feel the ownership of the results and delegate the step from, okay, it was nice to have a workshop and to take all these decisions, and now what? Now we have to go back to work and actually implement.
Next, we have Dr. Roni Reiter-Palmon. Roni is a distinguished professor of industrial organizational psychology and the director of the IO Psychology Graduate Program at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. She is also the director of innovation for the Center for Collaboration Science. Her research focuses on creativity and innovation in the workplace, team creativity, the development of teamwork and creative problem-solving skills, and leading creative individuals in teams. For those looking to develop along with whatever these new methods are going to be, what's a job skill, Roni, that you think is going to be critical to get right over the next 5 years?
Well, I think part of what happens with creativity is that organizations say they would like creativity, but the reality is that creativity is disruptive and resource intensive, and they don't like that part of it. So you have that push and pull. And the organizations that are successful resist the negative aspects. So they accept that creativity is going to be disruptive. They accept that it's going to be resource intensive. They're going to provide those resources. They are going to facilitate the effective work environments that include positive leadership, support for creativity, but also support for people. Because you can't be creative when you're stressed or worried about paying your mortgage or roof over your head or where the meal is going to come from, or kids in school being bullied or whatever the case may be. I hope to see more organizations moving toward that understanding. And I think there's a much more pressure from employees to be treated well and given the opportunity to be creative, which currently in some organizations you don't have.
Constraints help with creativity, but not the kind of constraints that you talked about, the I guess the stress,
Yeah.
right? To be able to address the other business constraints, consumer constraints, right?
Yeah. And again, it's not that creativity has to be constraints free. We all work within constraints. And actually, when we give people too much freedom, that's not useful either. But, it's one thing to be worried about, am I developing the right product versus, will my kid get beat up? Those are very different stressors. And also, I think we sort of glamorize this. We could be creative under stress, what I call the MacGyver approach, right? 1001 uses for duct tape. And under those kinds of stressful conditions, occasionally people rise to the occasion and come up with creative ideas. But the reality is, what we're finding is that most of the time, they don't. When we're stressed, we go back to what we know works because that's the easiest, least resistant path. And when we do what we did before, that's by definition not creative.
Next, we hear from Sunny Brown. She's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, seasoned facilitator, and American Zen chaplain in training. She's the founder of the creative consultancy Sunny Brown Inc., and more recently founded the Center for Deep Self-Design in Austin, Texas. What's the most important job skill the next 5 years?
Listening. Yeah. People are really bad at it. And I think it's one of the most transformative and restorative and mobilizing and generative things one can do, is just be present with people and listen. And it's an ancient thing. But I don't think it's something you have to learn. I think it's something you have to uncover. I think we already know how to do it. We just get in the way. So for me, it's like softening that, and then you're just available, right? So I think that's been powerful, and I think it will continue to be. And I think there was a term that Brene Brown used the other day. I know she's like America's therapist or whatever, but it was stewardship. And by that she meant people sharing something meaningful to them that you can steward. So you're holding space, essentially. You're not judging, shaming, critiquing, analyzing, overthinking. You're just being present. And in that way, you're generating, actually, this is another, can I have another nerd moment? You're generating this term called the we. See that? Me plus we. Right? To me, that is what's up for humanity. Like, we have to stop thinking we're isolated units that can be reduced to one person. We have to start thinking about each other as a part of a collective. We really have to sort of deprogram from this hyper individualistic point of view. So, and I think listening is one of the keys for that, deep listening.
It'll balance the selfishness.
Yes, exactly. Like selfishness, I think we got that down. Not all of us, but as a culture, we're pretty good at that.
Yeah.
So I think we need to understand the connectedness, not the separation.
Next, we have Dr. Samantha Dubrow. She's the lead human-centered engineering researcher at the MITRE Corporation, where she helps teams and multi-team systems across a variety of government agencies utilize technology to improve their teamwork processes and job performance. Sam, what is the most important job skill for the next 5 years?
I think anything that's going to help you with interdisciplinary work. So perspective taking, which we talked about, communication skills that allow you to have that unique communication and have that unique information sharing, even with people who might have the same different perspectives from you, and conflict resolution of, we seem to have more unnecessary conflict when we're meeting virtually. So how do we come back from that? And then you also have, abilities that certain people innately have better than others of, or have more than others of cognitive flexibility and adaptability and openness to new experiences, of being willing for things to change, and being okay with adapting your behaviors and potentially failing so that you can learn something quickly and try something new next time. So that's 7 skills.
On that perspective taking, is it a leap to say you could use the word empathy for that?
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
I was thinking when you were saying perspective taking, it sounded to me a lot like empathy. Are those different things?
I think empathy is part of it, and I think patience is part of it, but perspective taking is really the act of considering another point of view. You might be considering emotions when considering that point of view, or you might be, essentially just drawing the picture from a different angle.
Next up, we talk to Dan Levy, who is the founder and principal at More Space for Light. Dan's a strategist, creative, and skilled facilitator. He's also an educator, global speaker, tech investor, and startup founder. What's the most important job skill for the next 5 years, Dan?
I wouldn't like to say bias towards facilitation, because that's what I'm trying to to selling to people, not my facilitation, but actually to build that that discipline. But then that discipline is a subset of leadership, and this is another conversation that I've been having in regards to who are and what are leaders, what level of leadership, and that is even at entry level. There are different types of creative people. There's innovators and there's adapters. And the innovators are the people that love new ideas, love coming up with big thinking. And then there's adapters. They don't like big ideas. They just like to change and adapt and incorporate. And the role of facilitation, just like leadership, is listening, is bridging and bringing people together. And then, like the tool of the workshop's a tool, it's a platform. The facilitator is the negotiator. They're the listener. They're the people that encourage. So they've got to have such a high level of EQ, I believe, to be able to read the energy, the flow, and encourage people to be on the journey, to agree, to align, to show up. And it's not just as simple as plug and play. Being able to take somebody and change a meeting where people turn up and after 60 minutes, they're like, well, I don't know why I was there. We didn't actually achieve anything. We haven't moved anything more forward. All we've done, a result of this meeting, is more meetings. It's like they've chopped, the Fantasia with the broomsticks where they just keep chopping them in bits, and they're like, like, how do we stop this? Just stop going to meetings and then there's no more broomsticks. The meeting should lead. And that's a skill. And that comes back to the whole idea of actually taking account and processing and systemizing and actually being really mindful and deliberate in the way you go around and interact and building those frameworks, because they give you the freedom.
It seems like leadership is changing as well, which is why facilitation is becoming associated more with leadership.
Yeah, well, because especially with remote, I mean, leadership and facilitation, you as a leader now, you have to be able to bring people on. I mean, they now, most people are just, well, most people, that's a sweeping generalization, but the way they engage with work is they turn on the TV and they have where's the connection? Where's the culture? How do they believe in the mission when everything's like bits and atoms, you know, like they just don't want to work for you anymore, so they'll go somewhere else.